Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It's 2 o'clock, so let's get going on our council meeting for today. We'll call the meeting to order. And not as well prepared as I thought it was. Just hang on. So I just wanted to start off this afternoon just talking about a bit of news to share. So I think probably everybody has heard, but we were successful in our connecting link application for the Queen Street improvements in Mount Forest. So that's great news. And so we can let all those people know who complain about the rough section of road that the problem is going to be resolved sooner rather than later. And just wanted to share a little bit of information in regard to COVID-19 and vaccination and so on. So we've, in Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph, we've reached about very close to 25% of the eligible population has been vaccinated at least once. So that's great news. And also there's vaccine now going to be available at local pharmacies. Walsh's, both in Mount Forest and in Arthur, will have vaccine available. I believe it's the AstraZeneca vaccine. I think there's still some details to be worked out, but they are one of the eligible pharmacies that will have vaccine available. So under that part of the program, I think anyone over 55 and over is eligible. And then just this morning, I heard an announcement from Public Health that everybody who hasn't already registered for vaccination can begin to register. It may be some time before they get vaccine, of course, because vaccine supply is the big issue. But you can go ahead and register, and then when vaccine is available, information will be there for Public Health to contact you. So some slow, steady progress on that file certainly is encouraging, even though the numbers on COVID-19 infections in our area are kind of gloomy. So hopefully this is just a step forward in getting us to where we can get life back to normal to some extent. Yeah, so also just the cases that predominantly are in the region tend to be people in the ages, mostly in people in the age groups 20 to 39. And a big component of the infections are people actually under the age of 19. So that was part of what precipitated the Section 44 order to close the schools to in-person learning. Hopefully we can get the students can get back to in-person learning fairly soon, but I think some of that will depend on how things unfold in terms of the numbers of cases and so on. So stay tuned, I guess, is where that's at. I think that's all I have for right now. So I guess we'll move on to adopting the agenda. So I have a recommendation here moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa, that the agenda for the April 12th, 2021 regular meeting of council be accepted and passed. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to disclosure of pecuniary interest with regard to anything on today's agenda. I have none to declare. Councillor Hearn?
No, nothing.
Councillor Yake?
No.
Councillor Burke?
No.
And Councillor McCabe?
No, Andy.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to awards, recognition, declarations. It's my pleasure to create this or have this declaration with regard to National Volunteer Week. As we all know, volunteers are extremely critical to the amenities that we enjoy in our community. So it's really quite good that we are able to do this little bit of recognition to help recognize all the effort that volunteers make in our community. So I'll just read the recommendation here. It's I, Andrew Lennox, Mayor, on behalf of the Council of the Township of Wellington North, do hereby proclaim April 18th to 24th, 2021 as National Volunteer Week and urge my fellow citizens to recognize the crucial role played by volunteers in our community. So we'll look forward to that next week. It'd be, normally would be some celebrations, but of course with all the restrictions, that sort of thing is more difficult, but it is important that we do recognize how important volunteers are. So I guess the next thing on our agenda would be to recess to move into our public meetings for planning matters. So a recommendation here moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North recess the April 12th, 2021 regular meeting of Council for the purpose of holding a public meeting under the Planning Act for Mennonite Society of British North America, minor variance, Jason Aiken, minor variance, and Alan and Irma Martin for zoning amendments. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? That's carried. So we are recessed from our regular council meeting. We'll just switch gears here to Committee of Adjustment. I got to get the right paperwork. So we'll start with Committee of Adjustment. I'll call the Committee of Adjustment meeting to order. And we have minutes from the previous meeting. The recommendation here that the Committee of Adjustment meeting minutes of March 22nd, 2021, application A0221 and A0421 be adopted as presented. And that's moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We're back to disclosure of pecuniary interest again. I have this in regard to the Committee of Adjustment agenda only. I have none to declare. Councillor McCabe?
I have none.
Councillor Burke?
No.
Councillor Yake?
No.
And Councillor Hearn?
No.
Okay. So our first application, A05/21, is trustee for the Mennonite Society of British North America, care of John Weber. The location of the subject property is described as Part Lot 13, Concession 10 North, with a civic address of 9173 Concession 11. The subject land is approximately 0.32 hectares, and the location of the property is shown on the map in your package. Purpose and effect of the application is to provide relief from the minimum distance separation 1 or MDS1 setback requirements. The applicant has received conditional approval for 2 lot line adjustments, B55-20 and B56-20, and cannot meet the minimum distance required to the nearest neighboring farms. Other variances may be considered where deemed appropriate. How was notice given for this public meeting?
Notices were mailed to property owners within 60 meters of the subject property, as well as to the applicable agencies, and signage was posted on the property on March 26, 2001. If I could just, we have some people attending the meeting, and I'm not sure if they're here to speak to this application. If I could just make sure I have them covered. I know I've got Jeff and Mr. Aiken in. There's an individual, Azvari Jadav. Are you here to speak to an application?
No, she's with myself. She's just attending. She's our junior planner at the county and just attending just for see how things run.
And Olivia Rumble, are you here to speak to an issue?
No, I'm just attending.
Thank you. Okay. So you can proceed. Sorry about that.
No, that's quite all right. Okay, so we're on to presentations. Matthew, I see your smiling face, so could you share some information with us on this application?
Yes, I can do so. So thank you through you, Chair. Before you today is a minor variance application to provide relief from MDS1. The applicant has received conditional approval, as you mentioned, on severance application B55 as well as B5620. In short, the applicant went through 2 lot line adjustments to expand an existing parochial school. In this scenario, MDS is applicable given that the proposed new lot configuration will be moving closer to 2 neighboring barns and 1 manure storage. And rather than sort of trying to verbally explain the 3 requests, figure 2 in the planning report sort of paints a great visual representation of the requests before you today. And with that said, planning staff have no concerns with the application as the request is minor, meets the intent of the official plan as well as the zoning bylaw. And I welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you. Has any further correspondence been received in respect to this application?
No, there's been no correspondence received.
Okay, thank you. Anyone wishing to be notified of the decision must submit a written request to the Secretary Treasurer. And with that, I'll open the floor for anybody who has any questions or comments.
Mayor Lennox, is this my opportunity to speak?
Yep, please go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. I think it's been presented pretty straightforward. It is an expansion to the legal limits of the property, but the usage of the property has already been this extent. The kids have been playing baseball in the lands that are being added to the rest of the school. So it's really, the lot line adjustments were set up to reflect the ongoing usage of this parcel. So there's been no objection, no complaints or comments, negative comments. It's all been positive. I'm open to any questions, but the application is very straightforward. Any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Thanks.
Okay. So Karen, do we have anyone else who wishes to speak to this application?
Not on this one, no.
Okay.
Mr. Aiken is here for the next one.
Okay. So we'll go to the committee. Any questions or comments from the committee on this application? Go ahead, Steve.
Just under decision on number 3, that a reduced MDS 1 setback to the barn located at 9187 concession 11 of 120 meters down from 208. That seems to be quite a bit of a change. Like it's almost 40%, almost half of what is allowed, and that's what they're asking for, if I read that correctly.
If I could comment.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you. That barn is across the road from other residences that are already in between. It's just a matter of, you know, this say conflict with the school being close to the barn has existed already for a long time. Really doesn't make any difference at the end of the day on the usage of the land. Like if you look at the school that's there today, the distance from that property to that barn is only, say, 2 or 5 meters longer than what we're asking for. So you can see we're asking for 120 to the property corner, but if you look at that sketch, at least the sketch from our firm, if you took the distance to existing property to, I think the distance would be 125 meters. So really, that's all we're really asking for is, hey, we're expanding the property. To me, it's a technical thing, this whole thing. We're technically getting closer to these barns in terms of the extent of the property by just a few meters in these several directions.
Okay, thanks very much, Jeff.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the committee? Karen, go ahead.
I've had a couple people call into the office and I've received the email that they would like to get in, but the webinar ID number isn't working. So I've double checked that and it's the same, it's the right number. So I'm not sure how we should proceed, Matt.
I know one of the Mr. Weber wanted to come in on a phone call. I'm sure he doesn't have anything to add. He was just wanting to listen in.
Yeah, Mr. Weber was one. I'm not sure the other 2 came through. He might have been one that came through Tasha on reception. I'll just double check that. I'll go ahead.
Is this in regard to this application, Karen?
I think she's just
Yes.
confirming that now, Ms. Mayor Lennox.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, I think they're just, okay, go ahead.
Okay. So without any further questions or comments, we'll move to the decision. So in the decision is that the minor variance applied for in application A06/21 for the property described as Part Lot 13, Concession 10 North, with a civic address of 9173 Concession 11, to provide the following relief. Number one, that a reduced MDS1 setback to the barn located at 9171 Concession 11 of 215 meters be permitted, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum of 226 meters. Number two, that a reduced MDS1 setback to the manure storage located at 9166 Concession 11 of 200 meters be permitted, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum of 337 meters. And that number three, that a reduced MDS1 setback to the barn located at 9187 Concession 11 of 120 meters be permitted, whereas the bylaw requires a minimum of 208 meters. All those in favor? That's carried, so that's approved. Okay. So that finishes that application up. Again, anyone wishing the notice of the decision must request it in writing from the Secretary Treasurer. With that, we'll move on to the next application. This is application A06/21, and we'll go ahead and ask around for the disclosure of pecuniary interest again, which I have none in this application. Councillor Yake?
No.
Councillor Burke?
No.
Councillor Hearn?
No.
Councillor McCabe?
None.
Okay, so the applicant in this case again is Jason and Danielle Aiken. The location of the subject property is described as Park Lot 5 and is municipally known as 391 London Road South. The property is approximately 1.3 hectares in size, and again shown on the map attached in the package. Purpose and effect of the application is to provide relief from the maximum height for an accessory structure. The applicants are proposing to construct a new detached garage for personal use with a height of 5.48 meters. Other variances may be considered where deemed appropriate. How was notice given for this public meeting?
Notices were mailed to property owners within 60 meters of, sorry, hold on. I'm rattled, just a second. Notices were mailed to property owners within 60 meters of the subject property, as well as the applicable agencies, and posted on the subject property on March 26, 2021.
Okay, thank you. So Matthew, are you doing the presentation on this one as well?
Yes.
Okay, so the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you. Through you, Chair. Before you is another minor variance application to provide relief from the maximum height for an accessory structure. The applicant is proposing to construct a 2,666 square foot garage with a height of 5.8 meters, whereas the bylaw permits a maximum height of 4.57 meters. The applicant has indicated the additional height is required to accommodate the family camping trailer. With that said, planning staff have no concerns with the application, as the request is minor, meets the intent of the official plan as well as the zoning bylaw, and I welcome any questions.
Okay, great, thank you. So I have a couple of items of correspondence, one from Enbridge Gas and one from Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority on the agenda. Is any further correspondence been received in respect to this application?
Sorry. I'm getting emails from
No problem.
I'm getting emails from everyone saying that that phone number doesn't work, the login information. There's no further correspondence other than what's listed on the agenda. Enbridge Gas with no objection, and Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, letter dated October 7th, 2020.
Okay, thanks, Karen. So anyone wishing to be notified of the decision must submit a written request to the Secretary Treasurer. So the emails you're getting, Karen, are for people wanting to participate in this particular application?
Yeah, Tasha sent me an email saying a couple people had called her. Tammy had Mr. Weber that called her, Then Matt told me he also had this problem last week at another meeting, and Steve O'Neill has just sent me an email. Jason, are you logged in on a computer or did you phone in? And I've gone back and just double checked. It's the right login number, so I'm not sure what's happening.
Okay.
We might want to give consideration to the next meeting, because I know that individual, the applicant, wanted to call in, and I'm not sure if he was one of the ones that was having difficulties. Jason, did you?
Yes, I'm on.
Did you phone in or did you log in on a computer?
I logged in on a computer.
Seems to be the phone.
Okay. There's no other alternatives other than for people to log on their computer, is there, Karen?
Other than phone, and it's not working.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay. Where am I here? So does anyone wish, so we've gone through most of this. We're at the point now where open the floor for any questions or comments from the public or the applicant. Does anyone wish to speak to this application? You didn't have anybody registered to speak on this one, Karen?
Mr. Aiken, he's on the line there. He just spoke.
Okay.
Jason, this is your chance.
Yeah, I'm more or less here to listen and just answer any questions.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, I'll open the floor for any questions or comments from the committee members.
I don't have any, Mayor.
No,
Okay.
none from me.
No.
Okay. So if there's no further discussion, we'll move to the decision on this application. So the decision will read that the minor variance applied for in application A06/21 for the property described as Park Lot 5 and is municipally known as 391 London Road South to provide the following relief. Number one, that an increased height for an accessory structure of 5.48 meters be permitted, whereas the bylaw permits a maximum height of 4.57 meters. All those in favor? That is approved. Thank you very much. Again, anyone wishing notice of the decision, please register with the Secretary Treasurer. We'll now move to adjourning the Committee of Adjustment. And so a motion moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve, that the Committee of Adjustment meeting of April 12th, 2021 be adjourned. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And I'll switch over to the public meeting for rezoning.
So your worship, this is the one, I'm just having Tammy, the development clerk, call. Alan Martin, the applicant, had wanted to call into this. And she's just going to call him and see if he can get registered on the phone. And if that can't happen, Matt, I mean, if they're the applicant and want to speak, they're supposed to have the opportunity, correct?
Yes, through you, Chair. So, yes, they'd have to have the opportunity, but I mean, there is the opportunity to also write in, you know, if there was any opposition or people in favor. So, in terms of Planning Act, I believe everything's covered off, given that there's a written component as well. So, if that answers.
Okay.
So I think what I can do is, if he can't get on in the phone, I'll see about he wasn't able to get in the meeting by phone either. I just got an email from Tammy. Okay, we'll talk about it outside the meeting. If Matt's saying that the Planning Act conditions have been met, then we'll deal with this after the meeting then. Thank you, Matt.
So this is a public meeting for a rezoning application. If we're not comfortable that we've had enough disclosure, we could just simply defer the zoning amendment. Correct?
You could, yeah.
Through you, Chair, correct.
Man, I'm getting more emails during this meeting. So Darren's saying he got in by phone, so I'm not sure what the glitch is. Yes, we could defer the bylaw.
Right. Okay, so I think we better proceed and see how this unfolds. And if council is uncomfortable, we do have that option available to defer it. Okay, so just bear with me for a second here. Okay, so let's call the public meeting to order. And I'll ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest with regard to this application. I have none to declare. Councillor Hearn?
No.
Councillor Burke?
No.
Councillor Yake?
No.
Councillor McCabe?
None.
Okay, the owner applicant in this case is Alan and Irma Martin. The location of the subject land, the land subject to the proposed amendment is described as Lot 6, Concession 5, with a civic address of 7522 Side Road 3 East. The property is approximately 36.41 hectares in size. The purpose and effect of the proposed amendment is to rezone the subject lands to permit a dog kennel. The lands are currently zoned agriculture and natural environment. The subject property is occupied by a dwelling, a barn, and 2 sheds. The applicants are proposing to use an existing 136.75 square meter building or accessory structure for the dog kennel. Additional relief may be considered at this meeting. How is notice given for this public meeting?
Notices were mailed to property owners within 120 meters of the subject property, as well as to the applicable agencies. Signage was posted on the property on March 18th, 2021.
Great, thank you, Karen. Matthew?
Yes, through you, Chair. Thank you. So before you today is a zoning bylaw amendment seeking to rezone the subject's lands from agricultural to agricultural site specific. The applicant is seeking a zone amendment to permit a kennel in an existing accessory structure. This application is before council today as a kennel is prohibited in all zones within the Wellington North zoning bylaw. A conformity exercise was completed to ensure that the kennel is located beyond 150 meters from any adjacent dwellings or barn. And planning staff can confirm that the proposed kennel is surpassing that 150 meter distance from, like I said, any dwelling or barn. In addition, as part of the kennel bylaw, the proposal is subject to site plan control where the finer grain details of the plan will be looked after. With that said, planning staff have no concerns with the application and I welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you, Karen.
We could just wait a moment. Tammy is going to get Mr. Martin on the phone so he can sort of hear what's going on. And if you have any questions for him, she will relay the questions to him and let us have the answers.
Okay.
If just we'll give her a minute to get him on the phone. So Tammy, I've promoted you to panelist, so we will be able to see you if you put your camera on, but we will be able to hear you. Can you just let us know when you get Mr. Martin on the phone? We're just kind of a lull until we know that he's on the phone to speak to some questions if there are any.
Welcome, Tammy.
Welcome. Hopefully this works. I've got Mr. Allen on my phone. I don't know if he can respond, but should be able to hear.
Okay. We just finished the section where Matthew did his presentation on the application. You all right at your end, Tammy?
Yes, he can hear. We've just joined in now, so he can hear from here forward.
Okay. So we just finished the presentation from the planning. And so I'm going to ask if there's any further correspondence received in respect to this application.
Just from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, who have no objections.
Okay. So again, the bylaw will be considered at the regular council meeting following the public meeting, which is today. Persons wishing notice of the passing of the bylaw must submit a written request. And with that said, I'll open the floor for any questions or comments. Do we have anyone else registered to speak to this application, Karen?
No, just Mr. Martin.
Okay, and does Mr. Martin wish to speak to this application at this point, Tammy?
You wish to speak right now, Mr. Martin? Okay, thank you. He says no, he doesn't have anything right now.
Okay.
Can you put him on speakerphone, Tammy?
Oh, I can try.
Okay, never mind, just in case we cut the poor guy off. Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure, actually, if you would like to ask Mr. Martin to respond, we can see if he can hear, if you can hear him through the phone. Okay.
We'll go through the process a little bit further and then we'll see how that works.
Okay.
Do you have anyone else registered in regard to this application, Karen?
I do not.
Okay. So with that, I'll go to any questions or comments from members of council. Councillor McCabe, go ahead.
I've got a little bit of concern with this just because it's another kennel, and I'm wondering if we have any information on how many. I don't know the number off the top of my head how many kennels we already have in Wellington North, and is it possible to find out how many are in Ableton and in Minto?
Okay.
So, through you, your worship, we have 6 kennels that are they're either grandfathered or they have been properly rezoned that can operate. We have 2 that are inactive. One is a grandfathered kennel that chooses to be inactive, but to continue to pay their fees so they don't lose their grandfathered status. Another one was properly rezoned and they let their license lapse in 2019, but upon payment of their license again, they can start operating. So there are 4 operating. We have a total of 6 that could operate. I don't know how many kennels are in Minto or Mapleton, but I could get that for us. Not today, not during the meeting.
Right.
Okay. Councillor Burke.
Yeah. So from the planning report, it looks like they've met all the requirements for distance and everything. My question is has our animal control officer inspected or done a site visit? This property is already in non-compliance because the report says that they have 10 dogs, and our licensing bylaw says that you have to have a kennel license for more than 3. So I have a real problem issuing a license or passing a bylaw to amend the property if we don't know how these dogs are being taken care of now.
So through you, your worship, one point of clarification, when we revised and looked at our kennel bylaw 3 or 4 years ago, there was discussion in permitting up to 10 dogs in an agricultural area without the necessity of a kennel. And my recollection of that was because farmers need more than 3 dogs for protection of livestock and sheep, and so that got passed. So it's over 10 that you need a kennel license for. And yes, our animal control officer has been out to take a look at it. and is confident that if the rezoning goes through, the requirements in our kennel bylaw, which are onerous, they have to have air conditioned, heating, heat, air, running water, hot and cold, ingress and egress, unfettered ingress and egress for all the dogs. It's a maximum of 25 dogs in a kennel, not including pups under a certain age. They have to have separate whelping areas. They have to show us records of how many times the dogs have been bred. They're limited to 2 litters a year. They have to provide medical records for all the dogs to ensure that they're current with their shots. Those are some, yes, those are some of the, you can't have a kennel on an upper floor. I believe at one point we had an application that wanted to put it upstairs in a barn. And the feeling at that point was that that wouldn't provide a proper outdoor setting for the animals.
Councillor Yates.
So just to clarify, Karen, in regards to the kennel licensing, where it says the bylaw sets out a number of requirements and standards for kennel operations, that's what you're saying here. You're listing there's requirements and standards, all have to be met. Mm-hmm. And then in the end, they need to apply to the township for the license. And it's up to us at that point to say yay or nay as to whether they've met all the requirements and standards, correct?
Well, if the rezoning goes through, through you, your worship, and the requirements of the licensing are met, another requirement of that is they have to be purebred dogs. They can't be, I don't know, Heinz 57 for lack of a better word. And they have to be a member of a recognized kennel club. So, you know, you just can't hang out your shingle and just sell pups. But I don't believe that once the rezoning is through and Rick is satisfied, our animal control officer is satisfied that the building, and then that'll be a building permit probably process as well, that wouldn't normally come back to council for approval. Once you put the rezoning, if you put the rezoning through, that sort of says to us that if you can meet the requirements of the kennel licensing bylaw, it's just sort of I get a report from the animal control, building inspection is done, and then I would issue the kennel license.
But I think what Councillor Yake's getting at is that we don't issue the license until all of the requirements are met.
That is absolutely correct.
So is that okay, Dan? Is that what?
Yeah. No, so you, Karen, need to be satisfied that all of those requirements that you just listed are satisfying.
Yes, and they're satisfied through the building department and through our animal control officer. And there's a vulnerable record check as well. If it's a boarding kennel, if it's a breeding kennel, they don't need that. But if it's a boarding kennel where people are coming in and out and leaving their animals there, that's another requirement.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Councillor McCabe.
So at what point can we approve or not approve this throughout this whole process, Karen, just so I'm clear?
Well, I'm going to defer to Matt, but I'm thinking you need to either approve it or not today.
Okay.
Or defer it and bring it back and then approve it or not then. But Matt, is that?
For you, Chair, yes. So I think just reading between the lines for your question here is, it's if you approve it today, then it defers and goes to Karen through that whole process, but you guys would never hear it again. Like, essentially, yeah, it's approved, deferred, or denied.
But we would not proceed with the licensing end of it until the appeal period is over, which I believe is 20 days, Tammy, or 15, or yeah.
20 days.
20 days.
So what we're essentially, the decision we're being asked to make is that, is this an appropriate location for a kennel? And then they have to meet all the requirements that we've set out through our licensing bylaw to be eligible for a license. And until they have that license in place, of which the zoning is just one portion of the licensing requirements, they can't operate the kennel. Go ahead, Steve.
I guess then when it comes down to that, I guess my question for the rest of the committee is how many kennels do we want in Wellington North? I think it's as simple as that for me. So I'll leave that to the minds of the others at the table.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, so has the applicant reviewed the licensing bylaw that we have in place and all of the requirements that he needs to meet?
I have sent that to the applicant, and he has to meet the minimum distance. He has to be separated from a neighboring building, things like that. If I'm correct, I believe he's surrounded by a lot of aggregate operations. I'm not sure, so there's not a lot of homes. There is one there, but it's been sent to him, and Rick, our animal control officer, was out and actually spoke with the applicant. And maybe Mr. Martin would like to speak to that.
Mr. Martin, are you still there? Okay, if you would like to try speaking, I'm going to hold you up to the speaker and we'll see if the sound comes through. Okay?
Did he hear the question?
So I think the question, Mr. Martin, is to you was, are you familiar and with all of the requirements that go into getting the kennel license, as well as not just the zoning, but the kennel licensing process?
No, that didn't work, sorry. So I will relay your answer. So are you familiar with the policy, the licensing requirements? Okay, Mr. Martin says yes, he believes he is familiar with it. They have the information there. And did our dog bylaw gentleman, was he out to visit with you? Yes, he was.
Okay. Does that address your question, Sherry?
Yeah, the other question I have is, so there is another licensing bylaw other than 46-17 for kennels?
No, we might have made an amendment to it, but there'll be a consolidated one, a consolidated version. I just don't have that in front of me, sorry, Sherry.
But that's okay, because I was sure that in that it said that you had to have a licensed kennel for more than 3 dogs. So my big concern is that it sort of sounds like to me and to another individual that reached out that they're already operating a kennel now. So I think for me, I'd like to see this deferred. We can't really hear Mr. Martin speak and get some clarification on this bylaw that we have, because I read it and under kennel it says 3 dogs.
So just to clarify that through your worship, Sherry, if you have 3 dogs and you want to breed them and sell them, if you have any dogs you want to breed and sell, you need a kennel license. But you can have up to 10 dogs on an agricultural area. And to speak to the issue of whether they're operating one now or not, I guess that would be a question for
Mr. Martin.
Mr. Martin. And I am looking at bylaw 04717 right now, so just give me a minute.
I would be more comfortable if we could defer this. So I understand we're having the technical difficulties, but I really think that it's important for Mr. Martin to be a part of this conversation and not relay his conversation through Tammy.
Okay. I had a couple other counselors with hands up, so I'll just go to them first and then we'll maybe come back to that if that's all right.
That's fine, thank you.
Councillor McCabe.
So is this an exercise in them trying to become compliant, I guess, is my simplest question.
I'm not even sure who to direct that one to.
I think it would be Mr. Martin.
Okay.
Yeah, well, then we can wait. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I can carry on, Mayor Lennox. I would support Councillor Burke in deferring this till we can get open lines of communications and figure out what he's trying to do.
Okay. Councillor Yake, I saw you with your hand up as well.
Yeah, I too would support a deferral. It seems like kind of a somewhat of a backwards, maybe it's not, maybe it's just me, but shouldn't we make sure that the applicant has all the requirements in place, that we're satisfied first before we proceed with the zoning? Like, I mean, once we support the zoning, I mean, it opens the door a little bit to the, you know, some scrutiny to how it's being run. But I don't know why we wouldn't make sure that he had any kennel operator met every standard and requirement that we ask for before getting a license. So I certainly will support a deferral until we get more information and have Mr. Martin on the phone. Okay, so I see Karen with her hand up, and then I see Darren as well. So maybe I'll let Karen go first, and then
I'll defer to Darren first. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. As part of the kennel license, in some cases they need to build a commercial building, and to issue the building permit for that, the zoning needs to be in place before we can issue that permit. Then the building has to be finished and inspected by both building department and the dog bylaw department before they can check that box on the kennel application page. It is a complicated process for sure.
Okay, go ahead, Karen.
Even in applications that don't need a new construct, it's pretty onerous to bring any building, a new or used building up. It's hot, cold running water, air, heat, ingress, egress. I mean, if this is what you want, we can do that. But if I was an applicant and I had to do all of that at my cost and then get to the zoning meeting and find out that the rezoning wasn't passed, why would I want to do all of that work? Like it's a lot of work, like a lot of expense. I don't mean work, I mean expense.
Okay, Dan?
Oh, well, I think if an operator is going to go to the expense of setting up a kennel and having to build a new facility, he knows what the standards and requirements are. So he's going to have to, he's going to meet those. On a building like this where they're going to retrofit a building, it's a little different story. I think it is anyway. So I just, if I was going to start a kennel, whether it was my expense or not, I'd want to make sure that if I had everything in order, then I think, the township would have a harder time at denying a rezoning. But anyway, it is what it is. And if we need to defer, I'm okay with that again.
So I just come back to a comment I made earlier that really all we're doing is this with the zoning is determining whether this is an appropriate location for a kennel in terms of the property. Just because it's an appropriate location, if they can't meet the other requirements of the kennel licensing process, then they're still not going to have a kennel there, whether it's zoned or not. So we're not really actually deciding through this process whether or not there's a kennel going to be there. What we're deciding is this an appropriate location for a kennel? They then have to go through all the other processes to prove that it is a kennel, that it operates to the high standards that we expect, which is driven from a lot of the recommendations from the Kennel Club of Canada. So we've got the kennel clubs that we've taken, that information that we took and we put into our licensing bylaw. And so that all we're really deciding with the rezoning is the location. So yeah, if we want to defer, that's fine, but just wanted to try to clarify the process because it is a complicated process. Lisa, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just because I did find in our dog bylaw 6.2 does say that you can have no more than, so they're legal, no more than 10 dogs per dwelling unit in areas zoned agricultural. So if you're under 25, you can have 3. And so if you're agricultural, you can have up to 10.
But Sherry is correct. In the kennel bylaw, if you have more than 3 that you are breeding, then you have to have a kennel license. You can have up to 10 if you're on 25 acres of land without a kennel bylaw, as long as you're not breeding and selling or boarding.
Okay.
One other thing that's in our kennel bylaw is there are annual inspections, random inspections done by our animal control officer. So they don't just get a license and we never think about them again.
So as far as I'm concerned, our primary goal here is to ensure that dogs are handled and housed and looked after in an appropriate fashion. And really that falls to our kennel bylaw, not to the zoning specifically. The zoning, we're just dealing with the location, so. Mike.
Mayor Lennox, I just wanted to build on your comments about the primary being the location. I agree with that. I think the one other thing I would add to that is having our animal control bylaw officer who's actually been out, he also looks at the existing building to see if they're going to be able to retrofit it, as Councillor Yake has indicated, whether or not that's viable in order to meet the requirements of the kennel bylaw. So those things have already happened. That's part of what takes place before we get to this point. So I just wanted to build a little bit on the zoning piece. It's having the animal control officer go out to the site. He looks and assesses whether or not they're going to be able to meet the licensing requirements, or else he says, yeah, you're going to need to build X, Y, and Z building or things of that nature. So I just wanted to clarify that. The other point I want to make, and I hesitate to make this, but a lot of times when we're dealing with zoning bylaws, it's to address an existing situation. And I'm not talking about kennels, I'm talking about lots of other applications. So I just want to remind council of that to a certain degree.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Steve, did you have your hand up? You're muted, by the way.
I did, but I can wait till we defer this and get some more information.
Okay, so just from a process perspective, I mean, there's 2 different things we're dealing with here. We have the public meeting, which is the statutory requirement for public involvement for this rezoning application. And then we have the actual bylaw, passage of the bylaw, which we deal with through our normal council process. I'm hearing kind of a consensus forming around deferring this application. What is council's wish, to defer and have reconvene a public meeting, or defer simply the zoning bylaw amendments? Can somebody help me with what your wishes are, please? Councillor Burke?
Yeah, I think this whole meeting should be deferred because Mr. Martin can't get in, and we don't know if there's anybody else out there that's not able to get in to be a part of this discussion. So I would support deferring this public's meeting completely.
Okay, so Matthew, do we have to go through the notice period again to do that?
That piece I'd have to get back to you on. I don't know off the top of my head, so I'll convene with Karen and Tammy, I suppose, and get an answer for you.
Okay. So we may not be, if we have to go through the notice period, it's what, must be 3 or 4 weeks notice period. Anyways, if we have to go through the notice period, we won't be getting back to this immediately, but it will come back in the future, if that's what council's wish is. When we're doing that in the public meeting, Karen, do I need a motion to defer?
I think what it's going to be is I think we better do a motion to defer to a new public meeting, do that, and then we'll have a record of it, and then the bylaw coming out of the public meeting will just, we'll just leave it. We won't even move and second and defer it. We'll just leave it.
Okay, because the public meeting is incomplete.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so then I guess if that's the wishes of council, I would need a mover for deferral of this public meeting, moved by Sherry. Steve, you're willing to second it?
Yes.
Okay. So all those in favor of deferral? Okay, that's carried. So they will defer this public meeting to a future date and then deal with the bylaw at a future council meeting as well then. Okay.
Thanks.
So that'll move it. Yeah. We'll move on to adjourning this public meeting then. And so I have a recommendation here moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa, that the public meeting of April 12th, 2021 be adjourned at 2:56 p.m. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So back to our council agenda. If I get the right one here. Okay, so does anybody need a break before, or shall we just charge ahead?
Your clerk is having a nervous breakdown there.
Okay, let's carry on then. I'm not seeing this. So we'll move to resume our regular council meeting. Moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North resume the April 12th, 2021 regular meeting of council at 2:57 p.m. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We're going to skip right over the passage of the bylaw arising from the public meeting because we didn't complete that. And we'll move on to adoption of minutes of council and public meeting. So we're going to have a motion moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council and the public meeting held on March 22nd, 2021 be adopted as circulated. Any questions or comments on those minutes? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Don't have any business arising from previous meetings of council, so we'll move on to items for consideration. So please let us know any that you'd like pulled out for further discussion. Anybody? Steve, go ahead.
I'd like to pull 5A, the report on the fire safety grant program.
Okay. Lisa?
3A. And I've lost it. The Cultural Roundtable report, and I can't find it in here. Karen, you'll find it.
You mean the cultural moment?
That's one. No, I think she wants 1G. Is it 1G?
Oh, the minutes.
Yeah, 1G, I think is what she's looking for.
Thank you. 1G.
Okay. Any others? I'm going to suggest 6A. And 7A. So just to recap, we've got 1G, the Cultural Roundtable minutes, 3A, the Economic Development Update, 5A, the Fire Safety Grant Program, 6A, the Ontario Recreation Facilities Association, and 7A, the People and Information Network media release. Any others? Okay, not seeing any others, so we'll deal with all the ones that are not identified. Moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve, that all items listed under items for consideration on the April 12th, 2021 council agenda, with the exception of those items identified for separate discussion, be approved, and the recommendations therein be adopted. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So that brings us back to, where are we here? 1G, the Cultural Roundtable. So we'll deal with the recommendation, then we'll open for comments. So moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive the minutes of the Wellington North Cultural Roundtable meeting held on March 18th, 2021. Open the floor for questions or comments. Lisa, go ahead.
Yes, I've already reported on this specifically, I think, in my council report, but I just wanted to touch on a few things. We did host this kind of a hybrid meeting, which worked pretty well. Of course, that was prior to the stay-at-home order. I just wanted to touch on that the Mets Pumpkin Fest is going forward. And I mentioned that before, but there was an email that came in today, and I think Councillor Burke, I didn't see you on that email. So I just wanted to highlight that that's happening, and I guess I'll forward that to you as well. It's getting a fair bit of buzz, and that's something fun that we can all do and do at home and do safely. So we're really looking forward to that.
Any other questions or comments in regard to those Cultural Roundtable minutes? Okay, all those in favor then? That's carried, thank you. We'll move on to 3A now. This is the Economic Development Office update. Moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North received for information report EDO 2020-11, being update of the Economic Development Office. With that, I'll open the floor for questions or comments. Lisa, go ahead.
I was just hoping that maybe Dale could speak to his report a little bit more. Economic development, of course, I have a lot of meetings with Dale being the rep to the chamber and the Arthur B. Chambers and the Arthur BIA. Just so important right now. So I was just hoping to hear from Dale.
Okay. Welcome, Dale.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. Through you. Councillor Hearn, I think, is my #1 fan. So thank you, Councillor Hearn, for raising these items. Yeah, we're trying to keep as busy as we can, trying to keep as much information out there as we possibly can. A couple of things I think I'd updated the council on was the launch of our student startup program. So we're excited to have that program back again this year, where we can promote entrepreneurship within our youth. We've developed a training program so that they can take the training online, and if they have a successful application, take the training, do a final report, they can get upwards to $450 to help them with their business over the years. So we're doing some promotion and marketing on that. I'd like to give a shout out to Mandy, who's helping me get it into the schools and that for grades 6 through 12. As Councillor Hearn mentioned, the Cultural Roundtable is meeting. We're hoping to be able to do Culture Days later this year, which again would coincide with the Mets Pumpkin Fest. we're hoping to, during Culture Days, have a volunteer appreciation barbecue. So similar to what we did 2 years ago, I think, where we had the barbecue at the municipal office to celebrate 20 years of amalgamation. We would hope to do something like that for recognizing our volunteers. Digital Main Street, that got renewed, so we're now able to provide social media and website support to almost any business in the municipality. Digital Main Street used to be only applicable to our Main Street businesses, but with the additional 2 months in funding, the province has opened it up and said our digital service squad can support any business in the municipality. Yeah, we launched our new Northern Wellington Jobs and Housing site today. So if you want to click on nwjobsandhousing.ca, you'll see about 45 jobs that are listed in Northern Wellington. This is going to list all jobs available in Minto, Mapleton, Wellington North and surrounding areas. So we're hoping it kind of becomes a go-to spot for people looking for employment. And I think that's it, but thank you for the opportunity to chat. And Councillor McCabe, I see your hand up.
Go ahead. Through you, Mayor. You just made me think of a question, Dale. I went on and there was no housing listings, and it says in the report that they're not going to be on there yet. Is there a reason for that, or will it be coming in the future? Or because I know there's a lot of people that I have heard from in the past year or even more, just about looking for property in Wellington North, not necessarily right in town of Mount Forest or Arthur, but anywhere kind of thing. So just anything that can help them find a place to live here in the great municipality of Wellington North would be helpful.
Yeah, we will include, so if there's private listings or someone who's wanting to list a basement apartment or a granny flat or something like that, we will list those types of listings on here. We kind of run into a conflict with our realtors when we start listing houses for sale, because they tend to feel that's their domain and they have all sorts of ways of listing properties and that. So we've taken a step back from just general listings, but rental listings or private listings, we will put on the housing part of the site.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, when we'll also list, so if someone owns a Main Street business and the business is for sale, but maybe the building's not for sale, so maybe they don't own the building, they just own the business, we would also list that business for sale listing on that site as well.
Okay. Dan.
Dale, I don't think I saw it, and I know everything is dependent on the COVID restrictions as we move forward here, but was there any, has there been any discussion in regards to the Main Street closures similar to what we did last year in both Mount Forest and Arthur?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Councillor Yates. So there's actually chamber and BIA meetings happening this week. And one of the items on the agenda is to try to get consensus from both chambers and the BIAs as to what dates they would like to see those happen. So I'm hoping to actually have a report back to council at your next council meeting with some recommendations around that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, well, all those in favor then? That's carried, thank you. We'll move on to 5A then. And I'll read the recommendation moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan. That the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report DFC 2021-007 Fire Safety Grant Program. And further, that Council approve the application submitted by the Fire Service Management Team for the Fire Safety Grant Program and allow staff to enter into a transfer payment agreement with the province to receive the funds. And further, that the Mayor and Clerk be authorized to execute the bylaw to enter into the agreement. With that, I'll open the floor for questions or comments. Steve, go ahead.
Just a really quick one, and this is more for kudos to the chief and our fire department, just for bringing this grant forward and applying for it and being able to pool money to get better access to training and online examinations and move some of the laptops and computer items around so that our volunteers can even better themselves through more online training. I think it's a great program. And it's kind of found money that wasn't even in their budget, which is rare and much needed. And want to thank the chief and everyone involved for this application to make it happen.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Chris, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, just thank you for those kind words. And yeah, I'm just the face for this one. Cleese and Marco did most of the work on this, putting this together with equipment wise, and Cleese wrote the grant in. But we are definitely looking for some more online support. We realize this isn't going away, and it's going to be the future for fire training. So we're trying to get on top of that and make sure that our volunteers are supported the best that they can so that this can continue. So just trying to find that balance between online and hands-on and keep things moving forward. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we're on to 6A now. This is the Ontario Recreation Facilities Association correspondence. Moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve. The Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North received Ontario Recreation Facilities Association correspondence, open letter to ORFA members and industry employers regarding ORFA membership. And with that, I will open the floor for any questions or comments. And maybe I need to start us off because I'm the one who asked to have this pulled. So, you know, this association is not something that's top of mind for me, I have to admit. And I was interested to see this this correspondence and the importance of our professional staff, and that really struck a nerve with me, I guess you could put it. That often we have a lot of professional staff, not just in the recreation area, but across our organization that do a good job day in and day out without a whole lot of recognition. So I'm delighted to see this information and this item on our agenda so that we can recognize our recreation staff and all that they do. And it's been a very challenging year, particularly I think for them. But it's part of something bigger, and as far as I'm concerned, that we, do take the time to recognize all our staff. While we've all been struggling with the challenges the last year or so is put in front of us, our staff have adapted and continued to deliver the services that our residents need day in and day out, and I'm eternally grateful for that. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to say that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor then? That's carried, thank you. So we're on to 7A. This is in regard to the PIN network, or People and Information Network. And I'm going to suggest this recommendation is moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive the People and Information Network media release dated April 5th, 2021, with regard to National Volunteer Week, the value of one, the power of many. Open the floor for any questions or comments, and I will also lead this one off since I'm the one who pulled it out. And on a similar note to the last one, we did have the declaration at the beginning of our meeting, but I just don't think that we spend enough time talking about the importance of volunteers to our daily lives in our community, and I just wanted to take an extra opportunity to recognize that. I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but over the last year we've been a little more socially isolated, so maybe we don't necessarily see on a daily basis all that volunteers do, but they're still very active in our community, still very much delivering things that our community members need and want. And so again, I'm always grateful for all the efforts that our volunteers put in, And I hope that they continue to have satisfaction from what their efforts deliver as well, because it's volunteerism is not only good for the beneficiaries of those services, it also benefits the volunteers. And I hope those volunteers are finding some fulfillment through some of their activities over the last year and in the future as well. Anyone else? Steve?
I'll echo that, Mayor Lennox, as well. And I know in no small part our trails remain open due to the volunteers. I know there's a stay-at-home order, but these are the people that go out and make sure the trails are clean and still remain open and I guess be enjoyed by the people of our public. And in this time of great need, the trails are being very well used, and it's like a great thanks to the volunteers that keep those open and keep the rest of us active as well. So they, like as you said, they're kind of unsung and unseen, but I don't know where we'd be without them, and that goes for the service clubs of our township as well.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll call the motion then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So I guess that finishes our items for consideration. So we'll ask if there's any notice of motion this afternoon. Seeing none, we'll move on to community group meeting program reports. Anybody have anything in that area they'd like to report on? Steve?
You saw the rec committee minutes from last week, and wanted to thank everyone for being a part of that. And then I have a couple of Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority meetings this week, and that's about it for me.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. I was intending to hit the Recreation Committee meeting, but I had a bad toothache that morning, so I'm sorry I didn't get there.
That might have been, our committee meeting would have been more enjoyable.
I'm sure it would have been. Dan, go ahead.
I don't really have it's not really a committee report, but I just wanted to thank one of our roads department guys, Norm McClellan, who last night came out on a Sunday night, on kind of a crappy night, to clean up some road debris that had been intentionally spread on the highway, on Highway 89 or Queen Street West. So I got a call, and I called Norm, and Norm was in within about probably 20 minutes to a half an hour and cleaned it up. So again, going back to some of the our staff and what kind of role they play in our community and how much they care. This is just another instance of somebody that one of our staff that went above and beyond his regular duties, I guess, to keep the municipality safe. It was a bit of a hazard on the street, and he went and cleaned it up and got it all looked after. So once again, just a thank you to Norm for that.
Okay.
That's all.
Anybody else with items to report today? Okay. I was just going to report myself that I'm sure you'll be receiving notice before too long about the annual meeting for Wellington North Power again. Of course, year end has been completed, but I think we're looking at another virtual meeting for the annual meeting, I think around the end of May. So just stay tuned. I'm sure you'll all be getting an email invitation, and we'll have to be appointing representatives at our future meeting to represent the township at that. So just wanted to let everybody know. Yeah, and I don't think I have anything else. I shared a bunch of information COVID related at the beginning of the meeting and so on. So I think that's it for me. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to report this afternoon? Okay, so I guess we'll move on to bylaws. So we have a number of bylaws this afternoon, 7 by my count. So we have a recommendation here moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that bylaw number 36-21, 37-21, 38-21, 39-21, 40-21, 41-21, and 42-21 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And I just realized that I didn't do all my preparations. I see I've got cultural moments coming up, but I didn't print that out. So if you'll bear with me for a minute.
I can put it up on the screen if you want.
That'd be wonderful, Karen. Save me the time of looking it up.
Just give me a minute. My computer's slow today. All the kids must be home playing World of Warcraft or whatever they do on March break. Page are we on? We're on page 183. Okay.
Okay, I got it here too. So.
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, the cultural moment for April celebrates the Hamlet of Monk. When thinking of Monk, the Baptist Church usually comes to mind. It's situated on the northeast corner of County Road 16 and line 10. It sits on 1/9 of an acre of land donated by Robert Grieve and was built with the contractor W.W. Gorvat of Arthur. The church was completed on October 17, 1896. The parsonage and a stable were built in 1901 on land donated by James Blythe. In 1909, more land was obtained from the Greaves to enlarge the shelter for the horses and buggies, which was situated to the east of the church. This became inadequate as a closed-in shed was built in 1910 south of the store. The land for this was donated by Ed Sedgeworth. This building is no longer there. The Hamlet of Monk is named after Lord Charles Stanley Monk, who was the first Governor General of Canada after Confederation. He was born in 1819 in Templemore, Ireland. The first settlers came to West Luther in 1853. By the early 1860s, the area's population had increased enough, and in 1863, 2 post offices were authorized, one at Lot 9, Concession 10 in Monk. Robert Dunlop was the first postmaster. They had 19 postmasters over the 96 years of its existence. The post office was situated at various times from private residences and in the store at Monk. Postmaster's salary at Monk in the early 1870s ranged between $10 and $15 per year. In 1869, a $39 per year mail was transported weekly between Monk and Arthur. The post office was closed in 1959. David and Agnes McCarty built the Monk store in the early 1900s. It was situated on the southwest corner. A group of farmers formed a co-op in 1945 and took over the store from Mabel Blythe. Bert Glover was the first manager. It sold feed, hardware, fertilizer, groceries, and gas. The co-op later became part of the United Co-op. Today, the store is a private residence. When driving through the hamlet, the only prominent building remaining is the church. That's and this was submitted by Penny Rankin, Wellington North Cultural Roundtable, with excerpts from Steve Thorning's articles Tweets, Mirror, Histories, and Google. It's your cultural moment for April. Kind of nice to get back to those.
Nice to be back.
So cool.
Okay. So I think that finishes our open council meeting. We do have some closed session to deal with. So for those of us who are joining from the public, we're going to sign off. Hope you have a great day, and we'll move into our closed meeting session. So I have a motion here, moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan, that the meeting is closed to the public. Sorry, the meeting is closed pursuant to Section 239, subsection 2 of the Municipal Act 2001, specifically for item C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. All those in favor? That's carried.